Have you ever felt like someone was watching you? What if it wasn't just paranoia? What if your new neighbor wasn't human? This is The Sinister Neighbor, a terrifying horror story about a man who realizes too late that his neighbor is something far worse than he imagined. I never should have introduced myself to him. Maybe if I had just ignored him, pretended not to see him, things would have been different. Maybe I wouldn't be sitting here, trapped in my own home, afraid to look out my window, knowing that he's out there. Watching Me.it started a month ago when the house next door, which had been empty for as long as I'd lived here, suddenly had a new occupant. No moving truck, no for sale sign, just one night of silence, and the next morning, a neighbor I first saw him while taking out the trash. He stood on his porch, still as a statue, staring at my house. I hesitated, feeling the awkward weight of unspoken words between us. Maybe he was waiting for an introduction? That's what normal people did, right? I raised a hand in a half wave. Hey there, welcome to the neighborhood. His head tilted slightly. Then he smiled. It wasn't a warm, friendly smile, but something else, like he had just figured something out. His lips stretched too precisely, his teeth too straight and white that I told myself I was being weird, that I just wasn't used to new people. But then he spoke, and my stomach twisted. "Hello," he said, voice smooth and even. "I've been waiting to meet you." Something about that sentence felt wrong. It wasn't just the words, but the way he said them. There was no inflection, no casual friendliness, just certainty that I forced a polite chuckle. "Well, here I am." He nodded once, his smile never faltering. Then, without another word, he turned and stepped inside his house. The door clicked shut behind him. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. That was just the beginning. At first, it was little things. The kind of things you convince yourself aren't worth worrying about, that I'd glance out my window at night and see him standing in his yard, facing my house, motionless. I'd look away for a second, and when I looked back, he was gone. Sometimes I'd hear faint knocking at my front door in the early hours of the morning. Too light to be intentional, but too rhythmic to be random. And then there were the footprints. One morning, after a late-night rainstorm, I stepped outside to grab my newspaper. The sidewalk was damp, the grass still slick with moisture. As I turned to go back inside, I noticed them, muddy footprints leading from my front yard to my bedroom window. That I stood there, heart pounding, trying to reason it away. Maybe some kid playing a prank, maybe an animal, but the footprints were perfectly spaced, like someone had walked directly up to my window and just stood there. Watching that, I started locking my doors religiously, double-checking my windows at night. But it didn't matter, he was always there. One evening, I came home late from work, exhaustion weighing on me. As I pulled into my driveway, my headlights swept across his house, and there he was, standing in his front window. His face was barely visible behind the glass, but I could still make out that smile. His mouth stretched just a little too wide, his head tilted like he was examining something fascinating. I hurried inside, locking the door behind me. My skin felt tight with unease. I checked my windows, just to be safe. But when I got to the living room, I froze. He was in my backyard, standing at the fence line, his face barely illuminated by the porch light. He shouldn't have been able to move that fast. I stepped away from the window, my pulse hammering in my ears. I grabbed my phone, hesitating for only a second before dialing 911. As I pressed the phone to my ear, I risked one last glance outside. He was gone. The operator answered, but I hesitated. What would I even say? My neighbor is creepy. He smiles too much? I swallowed hard. Never mind, I muttered, ending the call. but I should have reported him, because things only got worse after that. I started avoiding him after that. I stopped taking out the trash at night. I parked my car in the garage so I wouldn't have to walk past his house. I even started keeping the curtains closed, just in case he was watching. But he found ways to remind me that he was still there. It started with the doorbell point one night, just past midnight. The chime echoed through my house, sharp and jarring. I sat up in bed, my heart already pounding. No one should have been at my door that late. I hesitated, then grabbed my phone and checked the doorbell camera. Nothing. The porch was empty. The street was quiet. But I could still feel it, that crawling sensation at the back of my neck. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, willing myself to sleep. But an hour later, I heard it again. Ding dong. Slow. Deliberate. I didn't check this time. I just lay there, gripping the sheets, waiting for it to stop. Eventually, it did. The next morning, I found something new on my front step. A small pile of teeth, not animal teeth, not fake. Human teeth. I slammed the door shut so fast I nearly crushed my own fingers. I wanted to call the cops. I really did. But what would I even say? That I had a weird neighbor? That someone had left teeth on my porch? No. I needed proof. So I decided to watch him. That night, I turned off all the lights and sat by my window, keeping an eye on his house. If he was the one playing games with me, I'd catch him in the act. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., his front door creaked open. He stepped out onto his porch, dressed in the same crisp, too perfect clothes he always wore. And then he just stood there, not moving, not looking around, just standing. His face was turned toward my house, but I couldn't tell if he was looking at me or through me. I barely breathed. My fingers tightened around my phone, ready to record, and then he moved, not in a normal way. Not like someone shifting their weight or scratching their neck. He glitched. 1 second he was standing on the porch. The next, he was at the edge of my driveway. I didn't blink. I didn't look away. It was like he had just skipped ahead, like a scratched DVD. My breath hitched. My body screamed at me to move, to hide, but I couldn't. I could only watch as he took another step. And another. 1 second he was in my yard. The next, he was at my window. I scrambled back, knocking over a chair in my panic. My phone slipped from my grip, clattering to the floor. By the time I looked up again, he was gone. But he had left me something. On the outside of my window, written in some dark, sticky substance, were 4 words. I can see you. I barely slept after that. I started keeping my TV on all night just to drown out the silence. I pushed furniture in front of my doors. I kept a kitchen knife under my pillow. But no matter how much I tried to ignore it, I knew one thing for sure. He wasn't just watching me anymore. He was inside my house. I'd wake up to find cabinet doors open that I'd sworn I closed. Lights turned on in rooms I hadn't been in. A mug of coffee, still warm, sitting on my counter, but I hadn't made coffee. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't my imagination. It was him. So I made a plan that I was going to break into his house. I needed to know what he was. I waited until nightfall. I knew it was reckless. Stupid, even. But I couldn't live like this anymore, trapped in my own home, afraid to sleep, waiting for something to happen. I needed answers. So I grabbed a flashlight, a crowbar just in case, and slipped out my back door. His house loomed in the dark, quiet and still. No lights, no movement. It looked abandoned, like no one had lived there for years. But I knew better. I approached the side door, my hands slick with sweat. I tested the handle, expecting it to be locked. It wasn't. I pushed it open, wincing at the creak of the hinges. The air inside was thick, heavy with a smell I couldn't place, something damp and rotting. I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the normal kind of silence, but the wrong kind. The kind where even your own breathing feels too loud. The house was bare. No furniture. No decorations. Just empty rooms and dust-covered floors. And then I saw the photographs. They covered the walls from floor to ceiling, hundreds of them, all the same size, arranged in neat, precise rows. My stomach twisted as I stepped closer. They were all of me. Some from far away, taken through windows. Some from up close, so close I could see the pores on my skin. Some from angles that should have been impossible, shots of me sleeping, brushing my teeth, sitting at my desk. My breath caught in my throat. There was one last photograph. Pinned in the center of them all. A picture of me standing in his house. It wasn't possible. It had only been seconds since I stepped inside. A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned. He stood in the doorway. His face was wrong. His smile stretched too wide. His eyes too dark, too empty. His skin looked thin, stretched over something that wasn't quite human. I backed away, gripping the crowbar. "Who the hell are you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took a step forward, and his skin split open. A sound like wet fabric tearing filled the air. His body peeled apart, revealing something else underneath. Something black, something shifting, something with too many eyes and too many teeth. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't stop. I bolted out the door, across the yard, into my house. I locked the door, shoved furniture against it, grabbed my phone. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. I dialed. The ringing filled my ears. 911. What's your emergency? I gasped for breath. My neighbor. He's not human. He's trying to. The line went dead. My phone screen flickered, and then a message appeared. I can still see you. I turned slowly. He was standing inside my house, smiling. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just smiled. I scrambled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My heart pounded so hard I could barely hear anything else. "Stay away from me," I gasped. His head tilted, just slightly, as if he was studying me. "You shouldn't have come inside," he said. His voice, it wasn't right. It sounded like my voice. And someone else's. Layered together. Slightly out of sync. I grabbed the nearest thing, a lamp, and hurled it at him. The glass shattered against his chest. He didn't react. I turned and ran. I didn't care where I was going. I just knew I had to get out. I sprinted down the hall, toward the back door. If I could just make it to my car, I could. A shadow moved in front of me. He was already there, not running, not chasing, just appearing. I skidded to a stop, barely avoiding slamming into him. His head jerked to the side, too fast, like a broken puppet. "You shouldn't have come inside," he said again. I stumbled backward, turning for the stairs. Maybe I could get to my bedroom, climb out the window. The walls shifted. I stopped short. The hallway wasn't right anymore. The doors weren't where they were supposed to be. Everything was wrong, like my house had been rewritten. I turned in a frantic circle, but nothing made sense. There was no exit, no escape, just him, standing at the top of the stairs, watching, smiling. And then, in that same distorted voice, he said something new. "I don't need to watch you anymore." The floor collapsed beneath me. I don't remember hitting the ground. I don't remember how long I was falling. All I know is that when I woke up, I wasn't in my house anymore. I was outside, but not in my yard, not anywhere I recognized. The sky was too dark. The air was too still. The trees around me were tall and endless, stretching into blackness. I stumbled to my feet, my whole body shaking. My house was gone. Everything was gone. Except for one thing: a house stood in front of me. His house, but it wasn't the same. It looked older, more decayed, like it had been abandoned for centuries. And in the window, I saw someone standing there. Me. Watching, waiting, smiling. What would you do if you found out your neighbor wasn't human? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this horror story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next nightmare. And remember, you never really know who's watching you.